Well, welcome Facebook friends and everyone listening today. This is Steve Rao, and I'm hosting today a special virtual town hall with Michael Landguth, CEO of the RDU Airport and a good friend of mine. So Michael, we thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I appreciate it.
Great. And this is a virtual town hall. A couple of things. First of all, we want to thank Radio Murchie. This is being broadcast live on the radio. Radio Murchie is the Triangle region's largest South Asian radio station. It's also aired in Baltimore and Philadelphia and other metro cities in the U.S. And 99.9 FM HD4, 1490 AM, and 101.9 FM. This is also being streamed on my Facebook site, and we will be rebroadcasting this interview Sunday at 4 o'clock. But if you're listening on the radio, we thank you. If you're listening on Facebook, we thank you. And you have any questions, during the first 15 minutes, we'll be live on the radio. And then after that, we're going to keep 15 minutes for questions. We have a hard stop at 4:30 because Michael Landguth has another commitment, but we're going to try to get as much great content in. So Michael, we have 29 minutes. Welcome to the show.
All right, thanks.
And thank you. So first of all, Michael, let's talk a little bit about, we're going to spend, instead of talking about the airport and its role in the economy, let's just talk about COVID-19 today. So talk to me a little bit about COVID-19 and its impact on the airline industry in general, and then more specifically, its impact on RDU Airport.
Sure. A little bit about the airline industry. And you know, this is interesting. COVID-19 not only had an impact here in the United States, but it had a worldwide impact. So for example, in the month of April of 2020, 61% of all airlines' aircraft were grounded at the exact same time. That is unprecedented at this point in time. As we start looking towards the future, what does the future of the airline industry actually look like? A trade group called A4A, Airlines for America, they've indicated that there's probably about 2,300 airplanes that are sitting on the ground right now domestically here in the United States. And they anticipate that they will go ahead, the airlines will wind up putting about 20% of their fleet in the desert and will retire that fleet out. So it looks like this industry is going to be a lot smaller at the end of the day by the time we kind of work our way out of this. The other challenge that I think the airlines are going to wind up facing is going to be a labor impact. Some people may not be familiar with what we refer to in the industry as the CARES Act. It's a federal program that provides assistance not only to the airports across the country got about $10 billion, but the airlines also got about $61 billion, of which half of that was used to actually pay for labor. And taking that money, that $25 billion of that 61 to pay for the labor, they could not furlough or lay anybody off until October 1. And the airlines have all made announcements that they plan to have some pretty sizable layoffs because the demand is just not there. So we're anticipating somewhere in the neighborhood of about 100,000 customers will probably not return, 100,000 airline jobs will not return after October. A couple quotes here for you. This is a quote from Doug Parker. He says, "This is the worst crisis I've ever seen in the airline industry." A CEO from Delta Airlines, Ed Bestine, said, "We should prepare for a sloppy, sluggish recovery even after the virus is contained." And so to bring that home to what's happened at RDU, we saw starting in that March timeframe of 2020, we started to see a significant reduction in overall customers. It was pretty dramatic. By the time we reached April 16th, we had lost about 96% of our customers. To look at it a different way, that means only 4% of our customers were coming through the front door and still flying on those airplanes. Pretty devastating. We've seen a little bit of resurgence of our customers actually coming back through the front door, but it's been pretty slow. We started to see, I think in the June month timeframe, we went from 4% in April to about 22% in the month of June. And I think we've reached a peak at a whopping 26% during the 4th of July holiday. And it looks like we're starting to soften back up, and it looks like we're starting to fall back off a little bit. I've talked to my peers across the country, and those markets that are predominantly leisure markets like Florida, they've done a lot better. They've seen 40 to 50% of what their traffic levels were in 2019, but it's a lot of leisure traffic. Our market is about 52% business and 48% leisure, and so it has a tendency to slide more towards a business type trip. And we just have not seen the business customer come back. The CEO for Delta Airlines commented that 93% of the corporate travel contracts that they've got, they have not seen those customers come back yet. So it really is a wait and see game for when the corporate customer actually comes back. So a little bit about the airline industry. Looks like that's going to wind up consolidating and getting smaller. And for RDU, it is a sloppy and sluggish recovery that has been very slow, and I think will take some time to actually recover.
What's the impact then of the pandemic on passenger traffic and the number of flights? So it's gone down tremendously as of July 2020, correct?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So we used to serve 57 different nonstop destinations here at RDU. Today we offer 27 different nonstop destinations. Used to have 5 international. I know that you have flown on one of those as you're traveling to India, going over Paris.
Yes.
We have lost all of our international traffic. And international traffic going back and forth to Europe right now has been cut by about 85% on a national basis coming out of the United States. So it's been pretty dramatic in terms of the overall downturn, in terms of the total customers. So again, we're sitting around 25% of our customers of where they were this same time in 2019.
Now, that's just incredible. And you've cut budgets tremendously. So looking this year, about 150 million of cuts in the airport budget.
Yeah, I'll walk you through the process to show you how quickly we kind of hit a brick wall. February 28th, we submitted to our board of directors a $300 million program. That's total capital, debt service, and operating expenses combined, $300 million. By the time we got to them on March 17th, we had already slashed about $150 million, or about 50% of that program had been removed in about a 2-week period. We've come back to the board for an official modified budget in the June timeframe of this year, and we're sitting at about 155 to 160 million dollars. But it's been pretty devastating. We were very, very, very fortunate that we wound up getting about $49.5 million of federal relief. A big shout out to Congressman David Price, who was phenomenal in helping us and assisting us. Right now, this year, it looks like we will draw down from our reserves about $10 million. Without that CARES Act funding, that number would have been $40 or $50 million. It would have been pretty devastating to the organization. So very thankful for Congressman Price and everything that he's done to look out for his North Carolina airport.
Thank you so much to Congressman Price. Tell us a little bit about, I got one question that just came in about health and safety measures we have in place. I'm having some issues with the technology here today, guys. So if you can't hear me, just be patient, but hopefully you can hear me okay. What new health and safety measures do we have in place to protect passengers today in RDU when I'm going to the airport?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of walk you through the process as a customer you would kind of follow through. And by doing that, I'll describe the things that we have done, the things the carriers have actually done. So first of all, we start from a parking standpoint. If you're not familiar, we have an online reservation system. The great thing about the online reservation system, you can pay in advance and you can load in your license plate. So when you actually drive up to the ticket, to pull the ticket, you don't have to pull a ticket. It'll recognize your license plate. It's totally contactless, frictionless. The gate will come up. You can drive right into your spot. And when you return, when you drive right back out, it'll automatically, the gate will open. It'll send you receipts. So we have an online reservation system that makes it frictionless. Coming into the facility itself, you're going to see lots of signage. Our signage is going to do a couple things. It's going to tell you about social distancing. And social distancing works, providing 6-foot separation between yourself and somebody else. It's also going to tell you that the governor's passed an executive order that requires face masks. Even if he didn't require it, we encourage that highly. Face masks work. They just really work, and we want to encourage people. A lot of our carriers, I know right now, American, United, and Delta, it is mandatory for you to get on that airplane to wear that face mask. So not only do we have an executive order inside our facility, but several of the carriers have got mandatory requirements for wearing face masks. But lots of signage. When you start to come to the ticket counter itself, we got a lot of stanchions. On those stanchions, again, are signs that remind people about social distancing, wearing your face mask. We've got sneeze guards that are in front of the ticket counters itself when you're going to check in, that not only protect the customer, but also protect the worker itself. When you go through the security checkpoint, same thing. Lots of signage there reminding people about social distancing as they get through security. And when they get to the gate hold room areas, we've got reminders with all the seats that we've got seats that have been kind of blocked out to remind people about social distancing in the gate hold room area. And again, sneeze guards again at the gate hold room area before you get on the airplane. When you get on the airplane, for the customer itself, a lot of additional cleaning that's being done. For example, Delta will clean their entire airplane every single time, and they also spray it down as well with a special disinfectant that kills any coronavirus. And if you're not familiar with the HVAC systems that they have on board, in 1 hour, there is fresh air that comes in 12 times in simply an hour. And it all goes through a HEPA filter to make sure that it will capture anything from a coronavirus. The authority is also doing extensive additional cleaning, but not just cleaning, but also disinfecting. We're cleaning twice the entire terminal during the day, and then we do a deeper clean at nighttime to ensure that any of those surfaces where customers touch things, we have cleaned, sanitized, and disinfected. I know that is a long story, but I want to just demonstrate to you all the things that we put into place to ensure the overall health and safety of our customers and what the airlines are doing to ensure the overall health and safety. And I will tell you that I have personally flown since the pandemic. My wife has flown, my children flown. I feel like it is safe, and that's why I'm putting my family in the air, because they feel like they can travel safely.
Are the airlines requiring masks?
There are certain carriers that are mandating that. You're starting to see a requirement. Delta recently made an announcement. American made an announcement. I will let everybody know, if you go to our website at rdu.com, and on the very front of the, we'll call the splash page, the first page you come to, we have a splash page called Fly Confident, Fly RDU. Our team has done a phenomenal job. Everything that I just described for you about the health and safety measures we put in, all of that is on that website. You can click on that and clearly understand how you make your way through. It's also got recommendations from CDC. It's also got TSA, Transportation Security Administration, requirements for going through the checkpoint. It's also got links to every single one of the airlines that will take you directly to their COVID page. I will tell you that the standards and requirements that the airlines are putting into place change very rapidly. So right before you fly confident, go to rdu.com, fly confident splash page. It'll take you directly to any airline that you're going to fly, and then that airline will tell you exactly what the requirements are going to be. But I recommend you check that right before you go out the door, because things continue to change as we find other ways to protect our customers flying here.
This has been very helpful. We got 3 minutes left, 2.5 minutes left. Almost done. I guess one question is, well, let me start. You were probably hoping Steve Rao wouldn't ask you this question, but it's always a question I get in. And given the fact that we're on a South Asian radio station, I think you know what that question is, the direct flight to India.
Sure.
I got people call me. I told them they're interviewing today, but talk to the community about what's involved in getting a direct flight. And obviously now it's going to be even harder just with international travel so down to India. But we have a big community that's affected by that.
Yeah, I was very optimistic about opportunities prior to the COVID actually hitting. We've got a very strong community that travels to India, and we want to try to serve that market from a nonstop standpoint. I will tell you that this COVID has been devastating to the carriers, not only domestically, but worldwide. To give you an idea, I think right now, going back and forth between the United States and Europe alone, it's down 85%. 85%. So a lot of the carriers have taken their wide body aircraft, both domestically and internationally, and those are the airplanes that they're putting away into the desert and retiring out, which means there's going to be a lot less opportunity and a lot less capacity that's going to be available to go after those opportunities. Right now, the federal government has got about 12 airports only that you can fly from internationally coming in from Europe in the United States. We are not one of those 12 airports. So I think there is still some time to go before we get our sea legs back underneath us. We get both Paris and London service back. And I think it's going to take some time. There's forecasts that international demand could be between 3 and 5 years before it returns to COVID, pre-COVID 2019 type levels. I think it's going to take a little time.
So like 9/11, we did recover. It took us a few years, but then we got back in a
Well,
couple of
let's talk
years?
about 9/11. 9/11 here at our particular airport, we saw a 24% drop over a 2-year period, but the recovery took 6 years. The 2008 recession went from 2007 down to 2009. By 2010, from an economic standpoint, we recovered. But we saw loss from 2007 through 2010, and we didn't recover till 2014, which is 7 years later. This is probably more severe than what we saw in the 2008 recession, and definitely more severe than what we saw in the 9/11 event. And so if you look at those two examples, it means that this recovery is probably beyond a 4 to 5 year window. We've seen some estimates by airports out there that this could be 7 years. We think in our particular market, because of the strength of the local community, it's probably a 4-year recovery, but we'll probably only reach about 80% of what our highest number was in 2019 will be full recovery for us.
Wow, well, it's been a great, we have one last question and we're going to have to get off the radio.
Sure.
But you've given us the website to go to rdu.com to get any of this information. And I'll probably bring Michael back for another interview because it's just changing so fast. But I guess we're going to ask about the RDU query and stuff. We're going to continue to ask just a few questions before we leave and open it up to the audience. But I'll end with this. I mean, just for the community listening, how much does RDU Airport contribute to the economy of the Triangle and this and just this region?
You know, that's a great question, and most people don't realize what the economic impact of this great engine that's been created. The North Carolina Department of Transportation Division of Aviation did an economic analysis of all their airports in the state. And what they indicated that RDU has a $12.6 billion a year economic impact. And as a result of the operations, generates over $450 million worth of state and local taxes. And it supports over 80,000 jobs. Not only the jobs that are actually on the airport, but the jobs that are created as a result of the operations of the airport that support it. And again, it is a huge recruitment tool. If you listen to your chambers, you listen to the state's economic development folks, they use that as a tool because most businesses, as you well know, they're not just selling in Morrisville. They're selling their products all over the United States and selling their products, goods, and services all over the world. And in order to be able to do that, you have to have a great airport, and we're trying to make sure we meet that demand and provide that service.
Well, we thank you so much. We're going to continue for a few more minutes, but we want to thank Radio Murchie for hosting the first 15 minutes of this live radio broadcast. We'll be airing this back. And we want to thank Michael Landguth and his dedicated staff for everything they're doing during this really tough global pandemic to run an airport. And I think all of us are pulling for your quick recovery. I know our business community, our hotels, our restaurants, many of them in Morrisville are hurting as well. And the better the airport does, the better it is for global commerce and global trade and tourism for our state, which I know would make Governor Cooper happy and Secretary Copeland happy. So just want to thank you so much. And folks, we'll be back. We're going to continue this town hall, but I want to thank Radio Murchie. And remember that the town of Morrisville is giving out masks. You can go to townofmorrisville.org and to find out where you can get your masks at public facilities in Morrisville, working with Wake County. So thank you so much. Michael, we're going to continue our interview.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you one question about the RDU quarry and the Wakestone situation. So could you talk a little bit about that?
So unfortunately, we have active litigation that's going on. So
you can't talk about that. Okay.
Being advised by my general
Right.
counsel, but it's really not appropriate for me to have a conversation. More than happy to have a conversation post that
Okay.
litigation, so we can kind of
Okay.
explain our position, but can't talk about that right now.
Okay. Well, we'll he's making good decisions, and we'll just sort of work through that. And that
Sure.
was a question not from me, but from someone that just chimed in the chat. So thank you for
Sure.
that.
No problem.
Let's talk about someone just asked me a question about cabin baggage. I guess you could still, when you the baggage rules haven't changed, have they?
No, still the same. So you still have the same size standards for bags that go on board. If you want to take them on board, you can still take them on board, and they still have the same size standards if you want to check them. And where do you go? RDU.com. Go to RDU.com, Fly Confident, Fly RDU, and they'll click you directly to the link for the particular airline. and they can show you exactly what the requirements are for each type of bag that you want to wind up bringing. That's the best way to find information.
Okay, fantastic. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, let's talk about, we have 10 more minutes, and this is something that I think really concerns me as an elected official as well. As over the years, I've heard you talk about airport modernization, how important it is, to have like airport runway, and that we were behind in RDU for our airport to modernize our runway and just basic infrastructure. So tell us a little bit about where we were before COVID, but how this sets us back.
Yeah, so it's been pretty challenging. So we've got 2 runways. The nomenclature we use is called 5 left, 2, 3 right, and that is our longest runway, 10,000-foot runway. So if you're sitting in Terminal 2 and you look out over the airfield, that is that 10,000-foot runway. That runway is about 30 plus years of age and has really seen some pretty good use and is really in need of replacement. We have had to do some kind of repairs on the runway. Last year, we replaced slabs. So you think about this, we've got slabs that are 25 by 25, 18 inches thick worth of concrete, and some of those need to be replaced. It becomes a very expensive proposition, but we replaced about 100 of those last year, and we did it during an 18-hour closure. So we closed for 18 hours, opened it back up after the concrete cured, and the Paris and London service took back off. And as soon as they took back off, we closed back down and did it again. If you can find a silver lining in COVID in the airport world, this would be it. In April of this year, we closed that long runway down for 1 month to allow us to do another 100 slab replacement. So we did all the preventative maintenance that needs to be done for that runway this year during April when we had very little traffic whatsoever. We are now working closely with the Federal Aviation Administration in terms of getting our environmental impact statement moving along. That's taken us a little bit of time, but I think we're starting to make some traction, and we appreciate all the support we receive from the FAA in that space. That process typically takes about 24 months, and we will continue to work our way down that line. And at the end of that period, we hope to be in construction next 24 to 36 months to build a replacement runway. The cost of the runway is about $150 million. It's an expensive price tag, but it needs to be built to replace the existing runway that is reaching its end of life.
Okay, I mean, that's just, and the fees that we, there's certain fees that you pay that are actually going into a modernization fund. But what I've heard you say in the past is that the federal government was using those funds for other things. So unlike other parts of the world, India, for example, where I went last year, the airports have really been modernized compared to when I was going there as a kid with my parents. It's just unbelievable. So this is a challenge we have, right? We're never going to be able to get ahead of it because we don't.
It is a challenge, and I would say that every citizen that flies out of RDU, you pay a sales tax. That sales tax goes to Uncle Sam up in Washington, D.C., and he turns right back around and gives me money back for the community in the form of a grant. The problem is, for every dollar that you pay as a citizen in this region, we only get about 4 cents on the dollar back. And the disadvantage is because the size of our airport, they don't provide us the same amount of money as if you were a much smaller airport in this country. That is just how the systems have been set up, but it really puts us at extreme disadvantage when it comes time to things like rebuilding your runway. That looks like we're going to have to do long-term financing to pay for that and get that kind of built. So it's a real challenge. I think the estimate right now is over a 5-year period. Commercial service airports, United States, need over $120 billion worth of funding. Each year, the federal government gives us about, that's over a 5-year period. Each year, the federal government gives us about $3 billion and some change. So they're going to provide $15 billion for a $120+ billion program. Yep, you're running short. That makes it very challenging, which means airports are having to use their bonding capacity to bond out that. And our concern is long-term that airports will be bonded out, which means that you won't have the ability. There will be no more credit on your credit card to build any more infrastructure. You'll be bonded out. Challenging.
Okay, that's really challenging. I mean, Well, I guess this has been absolutely fantastic. One question that I have and that just came in was, this concern of, and I've heard Fareed Zakaria talk about this, globalization, and all of a sudden, that because of COVID, less people coming in from other parts of the world, which would affect our economic development, recruiting foreign direct investment. The just less people coming in, it's just less of a perspective of international folks coming in and going somewhere else and bringing an perspective. So do you think it sounds to me like it's a short-term thing that we will get a vaccine, but it does seem like we're, at least for now, sort of in a very different path than we were a year ago, with less international flights, less people coming in. But maybe we should look at it as a temporary effect on our economy.
So I hope it's temporary. I'll tell you the side effects. So as we stay at home, which, that makes people feel comfortable and they can be safe. I get that. But the longer we stay at home, the more challenging it's going to be for commercial airlines. So for example, Delta's burning through about $27 million a day, $27 million a day worth of losses. As I've talked to local businesses about when they think they're going to feel comfortable traveling again, several have said about the May timeframe. That would be 10 months. If it's 10 months, that would be, Delta would lose about $8.2 billion if they waited till May. So the longer we wind up waiting, whether or not it's coming with a vaccine or coming up what we believe are good protocols to be safe, you can fly right now, the longer the customers take to get back, the higher the probability that this industry as a whole, whether you're flying internationally or flying domestically, is going to start to shrink. And the problem with when it shrinks is you start putting a lot of airplanes in the desert, you start furloughing pilots and flight attendants. That's not something that can be spooled up very quickly at all. And so it just takes a long time to recover. That's why you saw in the 2008 recession, it took 7 years. That's why you saw 6 years for the recovery after 9/11. The economic recovery will recover faster than the airline industry will. And that's our concern. So I think that's something we should be concerned about as a community as we move forward.
Well, this is fantastic. We could spend another hour. I'd probably have to bring you back, but I think we got through most of the things. I mean, is there any, I'll end with a closing message, but is there anything else that you think you need people to know about the airport, or, just the kinds of challenges and opportunities that lay ahead for us?
So first of all, we're here for the community. I mean, we're here in terms of, I know a lot of people are buying stuff on Amazon and things are flying into the airport. We're here to support them as they buy things and consumer-driven commodities. But I also want to let people know we're also here for them if they've got concerns in terms of their safety coming through the airport. If they'll reach out to us. We've been willing to give tours of the airport to show them what we put into place to make people feel comfortable and safe. We've also provided tours for people on airplanes. So we're looking for ways that we can engage in the community to show them what we've done so they can safely fly through the system. I want to make that available to our listeners today.
This has been fantastic. And I want to thank you so much for everything you do, your friendship with me. We've been friends for a long time. Thank you for helping Morrisville and Triangle and Cary and Apex and just all the reasons of the Triangle and the Triangle J Board of Delegates, which I serve on. I think it's so important for us to stick together in this pandemic. And, you brought up some really good points about the economy. I mean, the longer we stay at home, one thing I've been reading about is the impact on transportation. And today in the morning when I was reading the paper, unbelievable to me, DOT, our Department of Transportation, is down $500 million, they're projecting. This impacts education. You think, well, that's less money coming in, but there's almost $52 million or more sometimes that comes in to certain state agencies that get that money from fees that go into fund education. So that's down tremendously from 82 million to 52 million. So this is going to have an impact. The longer we stay at home, the more deeper it hurts. So hopefully we can get to a place where we can get safer, contain the spread, find a vaccine, and get back into a normal but we need to get the fear away so that we can start driving again. We can start flying again. We can start supporting our businesses, because you just can't stay down in a lockdown forever. And that's what I'm afraid of as a father and a parent, that a lot of it's inside the head, that we're going to have to live responsibly, but we cannot stay at home forever.
And again, I think you said it best, with people working together to solve these issues, whether it's coming up with a vaccine, but also working on, processes, procedures, policies, wearing face masks. There's things we can do that I think we can safely do this. And education and communication is going to be important in this space. So I appreciate what you do as a council member in our community.
Well, thank you so much. Well, we both have a hard stop. I want to thank you for being with this virtual town hall. We'll be bringing Michael back in a couple of months. And please be safe. Remember, you can get masks from the town of Morrisville. A lot of our events are being canceled. Raleigh has canceled their events through October. Wake Forest just announced that it's just happening all over. So it's going to be a long year. But thank you so much. And we'll be back next week for another edition and another town hall meeting. Thank you all.
Yep. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.